Hi, my name is Dwayne Walker, and this is a kind of a special episode of The Last Fundamentalist. Like most of you, I'm under stay-at-home orders unless you're an essential worker, which would be either the food industry, the medical, financial, health, repairs, anything that's absolutely necessary. And we're doing this, of course, so that more lives will be saved, so we don't see the death rate start quadrupling because of our negligence. Unfortunately, there are churches out there that are still holding services. And as a result of this, the disease is actually going to be spreading. This has already happened. And we've already had situations now where pastors and people who've posted things online that, oh, this is all a fraud, this is all a hoax, they themselves have wound up dying because of this, because they have underestimated this disease. And it hasn't quite hit home to me. I don't really know of anybody personally yet who has died of coronavirus or who has coronavirus. But a few weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, a friend of mine did die, and I thought that there was a good chance that he might have died of coronavirus. A few days after I heard of his death, of course I was kind of still in shock, I realized, he does work at a church bookstore in Florida. And of course, I knew that in this area of Florida, they did have strict stay-at-home orders. However, there was a pastor who was arrested for holding church services. But then the governor comes up and says, okay, he's issuing a stay-at-home order, but churches are exempt. So now it really doesn't matter. Churches are now, it's now legal for churches to hold services which can put their congregations at risk. And of course, you put those congregations at risk, it puts everybody else's lives in Florida at risk when they go out into the public. And there's a Facebook meme that says, if you know anyone who's going to church, stay away from them. And unfortunately, that we might have to do that. And the funeral industry has also been impacted by this. Even those who have not passed away from coronavirus are having their funerals delayed, and that was the case of my friend who did pass away. And I finally read an obituary, and I won't say what he died from, but most likely it was not coronavirus. But still, that doesn't negate concern. It doesn't negate the reason that we should be concerned. And over probably a decade ago, I had made this short internet movie called Don't Go in the Church. And the concept behind that was, it was about molestation. The former pastor of the church that I used to go to, that founded the Christian school that I attended in Jacksonville, Florida, way back in the 80s, his name was Bob Gray, was arrested for abuse of minors. And at the time that was happening, it came out that there were a number of churches where this was happening, and a number of fundamentalist churches, Pentecostal churches, Baptist churches, you name it. It wasn't just the Catholic Church. And so I made this short video where I kind of took as my inspiration some of the don't movies that came out also in the late 70s, early 80s, like Don't Answer the Phone, Don't Go in the House,
Don't Go in the Church. Child molestation by clergy is not just a Catholic problem.
Most American churches being hit with child sexual abuse allegations are Protestant. Christian Science Monitor.
Don't go in the church.
Well, today I could probably rework that and it would be literal. Don't go in the church, at least not while we have a pandemic going. At least not until we can have a vaccine and find out exactly how we can stop, curtail, or for that matter, even cure it. Although I have to say that cures take time. We don't have a cure for cancer yet. We really don't have a cure for AIDS yet. We have developed some kind of cocktails, like AIDS cocktails, that somebody who's afflicted with that can take, and it can stave off the effects. But it takes time, it takes investment. We can't talk like we're seriously looking for a cure if we keep cutting funding for groups like the World Health Organization, for instance. We're not going to be able to find cures for diseases if we keep muzzling the Center for Disease Control and tell them that there are some things that they can say, some things that they can't say, and if we tell our medical professionals that they can't contradict our president. I want to talk about some of the pastors that are out there. From going to various Facebook groups, I'm under the impression that there are church pastors out there who are still holding services even with the coronavirus going around. They're passing around this false idea that it's a hoax, that it's nothing to be afraid of. And you get the feeling they're trying to tempt fates. They're almost like snake handlers playing with an invisible snake. You know, the difference with a snake handler is at least you can see the snake, you can see the fangs, and you know that that snake's going to be coming for you. But if you're going to be snake handling with the coronavirus, you don't know where that is. You'll touch a surface. Maybe somebody with coronavirus has touched your Bible, and you've touched the Bible, and now you may have it. This is something you got to take seriously. But there are some pastors out there who are looking at it like it's a big test of their faith. And I understand from what I'm hearing from various Facebook groups that there are pastors being intimidating their congregation into coming to church. Like, trying it out like it's a big test of faith. And that is most definitely an abusive system. And without any hesitancy, I would say get out, run away, because there are other churches out there that believe exactly like you do, and they're not as dumb as to be having church. And yes, anyone having church services right now and going to them is dumb. They are not making a bold stand for their faith. If anything, it's just heartbreaking. You know, when people saw all those kids going to the Florida beaches, you saw people posting things like idiots and all that. But when you see the same picture of people going into churches, you know, you don't see a lot of people calling them idiots. And when you think about it, a lot of these people going into churches during the height of the coronavirus now are people who take the Bible literally. If they get infected, and if most of them die, their belief system is going to die with them. And in a strange way, that's in my favor, because we don't need that kind of belief system going out, but I don't want them to die because of it. No belief system, no economic system, capitalism or communism or socialism, is worth dying for. And for those who might think that this is another wave of persecution, that we're trying to keep you from attending church, I think it's interesting to go back in history and find out that there are other people who've gone through the same thing, who've come out with different ideas about it than we're coming out with today. And one of those people, interestingly enough, is none other than Martin Luther, the founder of the Reformation, the father of the Reformation. And over here on the webpage, The Reporter, which is the official newspaper of the Lutheran Church, they are printing a letter that Martin Luther wrote during the plague that was happening at his time. And it's interesting to hear what he had to say. He said he suggested for his congregation, and he knew this was being printed. Now back then, of course, they didn't have the internet, so the only way they could isolate themselves was to actually migrate to another community. So some were going to another community, and then some people like pastors or doctors, the medical profession at the time, were staying in the community. So the big question was, should we leave or should we stay? And his response was, use medicine, take potions which can help you, fumigate house, yard, and street. Shun persons and places wherever your neighbor does not need your presence or has recovered, and act like a man who wants to help, but put out the burning city. What else is the epidemic but a fire, which instead of consuming wood and straw, devours life and body? You ought to think this way. Very well, by God's decree, the enemy has sent us poison and deadly a fall. Therefore, I shall ask God mercifully to protect us. Then I shall fumigate, help purify the air, administer medicine, and take it. I shall avoid places and persons where my presence is not needed, in order not to be contaminated, and thus perchance infect and pollute others, and so cause their death as a result of my negligence. He was taking responsibility. I don't like the fact that he was persecuting Jews and burning heretics at the stake. If I were living back then, I would probably be burned at the stake. But on this thing, he is dead on. Then to those who just want to defy fate, he did talk about those because they were saying, well, if we have faith, God's not going to get us. And he basically said, okay, if you have the strong faith and that's your choice, go ahead. But not everybody has that, and they need to evacuate. But he had some really pointed things to say about people who were just flagrantly violating the quarantines that were happening at the time. And he said, some are even worse than that. They keep it a secret that they have the disease and go among others in the belief that by contaminating and poisoning others, they can rid themselves of the plague and so recover. I mean, we got people today trying to have coronavirus parties where they think if they spread it, somehow that's going to make it okay. Same thing in Martin Luther's day, and as you can tell, he definitely opposed that. With this idea, they enter streets and homes, trying to saddle children or servants with the disease and thus save themselves. I certainly believe that this is the devil's doing, who helps turn the wheel of fate to make this happen. I have been told that there are some so incredibly vicious that they circulate among people and enter homes because they are sorry that the plague has not reached that far and wish to carry it in, as though it were a prank, like putting lice into fur garments or flies into someone's living room. I do not know whether I should believe this if it is true. I do not know whether we Germans are not really devils instead of human beings. I'm thinking the same thing about Americans right now. It must be admitted that there are some extremely coarse and wicked people. The devil is never idle. My advice is that if any such persons are discovered, the judge shall take them by the ear and turn them over to Master Jack, the hangman, as outright and deliberate murderers. Your freedom is not at stake. Your health is at stake. If we come out, separate ourselves, a fun word the fundamentalists love to use, separate yourself from the world, but if we were to at least separate ourselves so that we're not getting the virus, if we're quarantining ourselves and doing self-quarantine, maybe we can bring this down. Maybe we can flatten the curve. And hopefully at some point we'll have a vaccine or we can stop all this. But cures take time. So right now it really is up to us. And if you're in any kind of a church like that, leave. Just
Don't go in the church.
So thank you for watching this episode of The Last Fundamentalist. Take care of yourself and don't test your faith. Please do not test your faith. If you enjoyed The Last Fundamentalist, subscribe to this page. Every Sunday, a new video, a new rant. And if anything in this video has inspired you or triggered you or made you angry or made you shout yes, then please leave a comment.